You don't need lipstick on a shirt or a mysterious perfume smell to know something is wrong. When a husband begins sleeping with another woman, the betrayal doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It starts quietly, invisibly, like a slow leak beneath the floorboards of your marriage. You don't notice the damage at first until one day, the floor collapses beneath your feet. Psychology has a name for this moment: cognitive dissonance. It's the mental tug-of-war between what you feel and what you're trying to convince yourself isn't happening. Your instincts say, something is off. Your mind replies, stop overreacting, but your body knows. Your intuition knows. You wake up one morning and realize you're not living with the same man anymore. The energy in the house shifted. His presence used to feel warm, familiar. Now it feels like living with a stranger, occupying the body of a man you once knew deeply. Here's the psychological punch. Men don't cheat when they fall out of love. They cheat when they fall out of admiration. A man can still love you in his own distorted way, but seek sexual validation from another woman because she triggers something he craves: ego, excitement, novelty. It's not about her. It's about how he feels about himself when he's with her. But the signs, they show long before any physical affair. At first, you don't notice the distance. You call his name, and he answers, but he doesn't look up. You speak, and he hears you, but he doesn't listen. Marriage becomes a house full of words with no connection. Suddenly, he's always busy, busy at work, busy on his phone, busy thinking, busy doing anything except being present with you. You watch him, study him, analyze him without even realizing it. You become an emotional detective, not because you want to, but because he forces you to. A woman becomes suspicious only after she becomes neglected. Stop here and ask yourself, when did you start feeling like you were interrupting his life instead of being part of it? That feeling is not accidental. When a man emotionally invests in another woman, he becomes unavailable to you. He stops initiating conversations. He stops joking. He stops touching. He stops trying. He doesn't argue anymore, not because he's calm, but because he doesn't care enough to fight. He begins treating you like a roommate instead of a partner. Psychology says, where attention flows, attachment grows. His attention leaves your relationship long before his body leaves your bed. He starts protecting his phone like it carries state secrets, not because he suddenly values privacy, but because he fears exposure. Before, his phone lay casually on the couch, screen facing up, unlocked, unbothered. Now, he keeps it face down, takes it to the bathroom, sleeps with it under his pillow, sets a new passcode. He says, I just need privacy. No cheaters don't want privacy. They want secrecy. Privacy is healthy. Secrecy is toxic. He doesn't want space to breathe. He wants space to betray you. Sense the shift in intimacy. He used to kiss you without thinking, touch you when he passed, play with your hair, reach for your hand. Now, intimacy feels like a transaction, planned, measured, obligatory. He used to initiate affection. Now he avoids it, or worse, he suddenly becomes too affectionate. New passion, new techniques, new moves. Psychology reveals the truth. When a man cheats physically, guilt temporarily increases desire at home. Not because he wants you, but because he wants to feel like a good person. He is not being more intimate out of love. He is being more intimate to cover the scent of betrayal. His excuses become rehearsed. His stories become too detailed. A faithful man tells the truth simply. A cheating man narrates it like a script. You ask where he was. He gives you a timeline. You ask who he was with. He gives you backstory. You ask one detail. He gives you 20. Over-explaining is not honesty. It's fear. Then comes the emotional withdrawal. He stops asking how your day was. He stops noticing when your voice cracks. He stops looking at you. Not like before, not with softness, not with appreciation. He looks at you the way someone looks at a place they no longer live in. He starts comparing subtly, quietly. She respects me. She understands me. She supports me. You realize he isn't defending another woman. He is defending his escape. Men don't cheat because they find someone better. They cheat because they find someone who makes them feel like a better version of themselves. The new woman sees his potential. You see his reality. That's why you are a threat to his fantasy. The most painful, moment isn't discovering the affair. It's realizing how easily he detached. You lie in bed beside him, inches apart, but emotionally you are continents away. You used to fall asleep feeling chosen. Now you fall asleep feeling replaceable. Here's what psychology says about intuition. Your nervous system registers betrayal before your brain does. That pit in your stomach, that sudden anxiety, that tightness in your chest is not insecurity. It's data. Your body is telling you the truth that your heart isn't ready to face. You keep searching for proof. When the proof is already in how he treats you, you don't need to catch him cheating. You already feel the emptiness. You already sense the disconnection. You already hear the silence. The red flags were there all along. You just loved him too much to see them as warnings. But here's the one truth. Psychology wants you to understand. When a man's behavior suddenly changes without explanation, there is an explanation. You deserve transparency. You deserve loyalty. You deserve emotional safety. You do not have to beg for the truth. You already know it. Now the question becomes, what will you do with what your intuition already told you? Once your intuition sounds the alarm, everything begins to make sense in ways you had denied before. You notice the tiny inconsistencies in his stories, the late nights at work that suddenly repeat every week, the vague mentions of meeting friends that never seem to add up. These small gaps feel insignificant at first, but over time they accumulate into a pattern. Patterns don't lie. A man who is emotionally unfaithful will exhibit a rhythm of secrecy and distraction that grows stronger each day. You begin to realize that it's not a single act of infidelity that destroys trust. It's the gradual erosion of transparency, the slow withdrawal of attention and care that leaves you feeling invisible in the very life you built together. The first undeniable sign is emotional distance. Emotional distance is subtle at first. It appears as a lack of interest in your day-to-day experiences, a disinterest in your thoughts, your opinions, your joys, and your frustrations. He used to ask how your day went, remember the small details, laugh at your jokes, and notice your small victories. Now those interactions are reduced to brief, uninterested exchanges, or even worse, they disappear entirely. He no longer seeks connection, only silence. His emotional absence is more painful than any physical betrayal because it speaks to the part of him that should be entirely devoted to you. You start to feel like a roommate rather than a partner. You watch him and sense that the man you married, the man who once valued your presence, is being slowly replaced by someone you no longer know, someone whose focus lies somewhere else. The second sign is secrecy, particularly around his phone and digital life. A man who is hiding an affair becomes increasingly protective of his devices. His phone, once casually left on tables, now disappears into his pocket, his bag, or under his pillow. He changes passwords, turns off notifications, and guards his screen from your view. If confronted, he accuses you of invading his privacy. But privacy is a mutual, healthy boundary. Secrecy is a shield for deception. Pay attention to the subtle cues, the way he answers text messages with tension, the way he jumps when a notification sounds, the sudden urgency with which he locks his phone when you enter the room. These behaviors are not about protecting himself from harm. They are about protecting the lie he has woven. The third sign is defensiveness. When confronted about his behavior, a cheating husband rarely admits wrongdoing. Instead, he attacks your perception of reality. He calls you paranoid, dramatic, or controlling. He flips the narrative so that your concerns become the problem. This defensiveness is psychological armor. It shields him from the guilt he feels while simultaneously undermining your confidence in your own observations. He is no longer accountable to the relationship. He is accountable only to his need to protect the other woman and himself. Arguments that never existed before suddenly flare over trivial matters. These conflicts aren't genuine. They are manufactured to justify his emotional and physical absence. Then comes the fourth sign, sudden, unusual changes in behavior and appearance. A cheating man often becomes more attentive to his grooming, wardrobe, and physical presence. He may start wearing new colognes, changing his hairstyle, or hitting the gym with unusual frequency. These changes are not about self-improvement for the sake of the marriage. They are designed to impress someone else. The subtle but unmistakable reality is that his energy is being poured into making himself appealing to another woman, while neglecting the woman he supposedly loves. What makes this particularly painful is that he may now exhibit traits or attention that you requested and waited for years to receive. But now, all of it is directed elsewhere. Another crucial sign is a decline in intimacy. The bedroom becomes a place of avoidance rather than connection. He may claim fatigue, stress, or other excuses to avoid sexual contact. Alternatively, he may exhibit exaggerated passion, new behaviors, or unusual enthusiasm that feels out of place. Psychology reveals that this overcompensation is often a reflection of guilt, not desire. Guilt-driven attention is different from love-driven attention. It is performative rather than genuine. You may feel the difference intuitively. The touch lacks warmth, the presence lacks care, the actions lack authenticity. The fifth sign is future planning without you. Cheating men often begin to exclude their wives from long-term discussions, from small life decisions to major financial or personal choices. He may speak about events, vacations, or purchases as though your opinion is irrelevant, as though the life you share is secondary to the life he is creating elsewhere. This absence from planning signals that his attachment has shifted. The more he invests mentally and emotionally in another woman, the less he invests in the life he shares with you. Your relationship slowly becomes a shadow, a placeholder, a convenience rather than a partnership. Then there is the subtle, psychological comparison. A man engaged in an affair starts unconsciously measuring you against the new woman. This doesn't always manifest as direct criticism. It may be an offhand remark, sarcasm, or increased irritability over things that never bothered him before. He resents your realism and your familiarity because it reminds him of responsibility, commitment, and accountability, qualities that the affair allows him to avoid. Meanwhile, the other woman sees only what he wants her to see: charm, charisma, and potential. The comparison undermines your confidence because it's invisible, pervasive, and psychologically manipulative. The sixth sign is indifference. It's not anger or irritation. It's the absence of emotion. Anger still signifies connection. Frustration still means investment. Indifference is the ultimate betrayal. A man who is indifferent no longer values your emotions, your presence, or your voice. He no longer notices your pain, your achievements, or your struggles. He exists in the marriage physically, but emotionally elsewhere. The gap is tangible. It's the hollow ache of absence in the midst of proximity. You feel it in your chest, in your gut, in the way he avoids eye contact or the way he walks past you without acknowledging your presence. Emotional absence is more revealing than any affair. Finally, the most painful truth of all you already know. You have always known. The signs, the gaps, the tension, the avoidance, the distance, the sudden changes, they are all data. Your body recognizes the betrayal before your mind can process it. Your intuition has been warning you from the start. You may have doubted yourself, blamed yourself, rationalized the behavior, or ignored the whispers of your own awareness. But every shift, every inconsistency, every guarded glance is evidence. The truth is undeniable. Your husband is no longer fully invested in the marriage. Someone else occupies the emotional space that belongs to you, and you can feel it. At this point, the question is no longer about catching him in the act. The question is about recognizing the truth and reclaiming your power. Infidelity is rarely about love for another woman. It's about betrayal of the self, the relationship, and the trust that once defined your union. The signs are clear. Your intuition is clear. The heartbreak is undeniable. But so is your ability to respond with awareness, strength, and clarity. The moment you face these signs without denial is the moment you step toward empowerment. There comes a moment in every woman's life when the truth can no longer be ignored. You realize that the late nights, the unexplained absences, the defensive answers, the emotional distance, they weren't random. They weren't just stress, work, or mood swings. They were signs, whispers from your intuition that something in your marriage had shifted, that someone else had taken the place that was once entirely yours. And the hardest part isn't discovering the affair. It's realizing that it's been happening long before the physical betrayal. He had already started leaving emotionally, long before his body followed. When you confront him, or even when you don't, there's a part of you that aches with clarity. You feel invisible, unheard, unchosen. And yet the pain of that awareness is also the beginning of your awakening. Psychology teaches us that betrayal is a mirror. It reflects the truth not just about the other person, but about what you have been tolerating, what you have been ignoring, and where you have been sacrificing your own self-worth. The hardest realization is that you didn't fail to love him enough. You didn't fail to give. He failed to honor the commitment he promised. The responsibility for the betrayal is entirely his. You start to see patterns clearly. The secrecy, the defensiveness, the distance, the overcompensation, all of it makes sense. And suddenly a powerful truth emerges. The person you thought you were married to is gone. The man who laughed at your jokes, held your hand when you were anxious and genuinely wanted to share his life with you, has been replaced by someone who prioritizes desire over loyalty, thrill over honesty. This is devastating, but it is also liberating, because once the illusion is gone, so is the blind hope that kept you trapped. You are no longer waiting for him to change. You are no longer asking for validation from someone who has chosen another path. The next step is reclaiming your power. Betrayal does not define you. Infidelity is not a measure of your worth. Your pain is real, your heartbreak is valid, and your anger is justified, but it can also be transformed into strength. There is a rare, almost sacred power in the woman who recognizes the signs of betrayal and refuses to let it destroy her spirit. You do not need to humiliate him. You do not need revenge. You do not need to argue or manipulate. The true power is in detachment, in reclaiming yourself, your peace, and your life. The moment you choose yourself, everything changes. Your worth is no longer tied to his attention, his loyalty, or his affection. You are not defined by his mistakes or his betrayals. You are defined by the integrity with which you navigate the heartbreak, the clarity with which you set boundaries, and the courage with which you protect your heart. This is the awakening every woman must experience, understanding that losing a man who cheats is not a loss, it is liberation. Losing yourself in trying to hold a man who is gone would have been the real tragedy. You also realize something crucial about human nature. Men rarely recognize the value of what they have until it is gone. The man who chooses another woman will eventually understand that the love he abandoned was rare, deep, and irreplaceable. He may attempt to return, to apologize, to reclaim what he lost, but by then you are no longer the same woman who waited. You have healed. You have rebuilt yourself. You have risen from betrayal with a strength and clarity that no other woman, no other temptation can shake. Your loyalty to yourself has become your superpower. This is the ultimate lesson psychology reveals. Betrayal is never about you. It is about the other person's inability to honor commitment, to remain loyal, and to confront their own flaws. A faithful partner builds trust, nurtures intimacy, and chooses the relationship every single day. A cheating partner seeks validation outside because they are not whole enough to remain present, to remain responsible, and to honor the bond they vowed to protect. Recognizing this frees you from self-blame and rewrites the story of your heartbreak into one of empowerment. And here is the final awakening. Once you step into this power, you are untouchable, not in arrogance but in self-respect. You no longer chase validation. You no longer justify love. You no longer beg for presence. You simply live, and your energy, your confidence, and your clarity speak louder than any argument, any confrontation, or any attempt at reconciliation. You are whole again, and that completeness cannot be compromised by someone else's betrayal. Betrayal also teaches discernment. You begin to recognize what is worth your energy, what deserves your heart, and what will never serve your growth. You see clearly that a man who cheats does not belong in the life you are building. He may have been part of your past, but he does not define your future. This clarity creates boundaries that protect your emotional space. You learn to prioritize yourself over appearances, peace over attachment, and growth over despair. And eventually you feel it, the moment where grief turns into gratitude. Grateful not for the betrayal itself, but for the awakening it forced upon you. You are grateful that you no longer need to compromise your worth. Grateful that you no longer invest energy in someone who does not deserve it. Grateful that the heartbreak forced you to rediscover the woman you were before you allowed neglect to chip away at your spirit. You have survived emotional warfare, deception, and betrayal. You have emerged stronger, wiser, and infinitely more aware of your value. The final truth: you are enough. You were never lacking. You do not need to change, beg, or compromise to be worthy of love. The man who cheated has revealed his true character, and in doing so he has cleared the path for the love you truly deserve. Authentic, loyal, and unwavering. You have been given a gift, albeit a painful one, the clarity to recognize your worth, the courage to protect it, and the wisdom to never settle for less.